Welcome back to The Juggle is Real. I'm Andryanna, and I'm grateful for your attention today because I think this conversation is going to resonate with many of us because it speaks to something that doesn't always get said out loud, that you can love your partner, you can have a, quote unquote, good relationship with your spouse, and you can still feel frustrated, disconnected, or maybe like something is just a little bit off. And it's confusing because, there's nothing necessarily overtly wrong, but it also doesn't feel as connected or as easy as you thought it would. So today we are getting into that, not from a surface level or just like, you got to communicate, because we've heard that many times, right? Or just like, plan a date night, but just really understanding what is happening underneath the dynamics that so many couples find themselves in, especially in these very busy seasons of life. Today, I am joined by Monica Tanner. She is a relationship coach, certified in relational life therapy and sex therapy, and she is the host of Secrets of Happily Ever After podcast. She's also the author of the Amazon bestselling book, Bad Marriage Advice, and has spent years helping couples strengthen communication, rebuild connection, and move out of what she calls roommate syndrome, going back into real partnership. So in this episode, we are going to talk about why relationships can feel strained even when there's love and effort. We're going to talk about what's actually happening underneath that resentment that you might be feeling, underneath that disconnection. We're going to talk about the mental load and how our daily life pressure shows up inside a relationship and why the just communicate more isn't enough in this day and age. We are going to go into what real teamwork looks like in a modern relationship and how to start rebuilding connection in ways that actually feel doable. This is a really honest, a really grounded, and I think a very important conversation. So let's dive right in.
This is the Juggle is Real podcast. I hope you feel seen, that you realize your worth, lighten your load, and prioritize your own needs. As we hear from leading experts and well-known faces in the wellness, entrepreneurship, education, and motherhood space, I hope you gain insights, proven practices, and learn actionable tools to help you enjoy the juggle of work, family, and everything in between with a little less stress and a lot more ease, joy, and fun. Most of all, I hope you find what you need to simplify, streamline, and supercharge your own journey of better balance and self-love. Are you with me? Let's get started.
This episode of The Juggle is Real is supported by Tinco. Now, if your home feels like it took a little bit of a hit this winter, like mine, we got the muddy floors right now, you might have pet hair, there's perhaps random spills from children or people and just everyday life. And I feel you there, because this time of year, it is that reset for me. And I want to feel that fresh start to spring. So one thing that has genuinely made a difference in our routine lately is the Tinco Go H2O Hammerhead with Mess Detect. So it is a cordless 3-in-1 cleaner. That means it vacuums, mops, and self-cleans all at once. So that just saves so much time. I've been using it almost daily because it's so easy to pick up, especially in those high traffic areas that see a lot of mess. And I will say my husband, Ryan, is fully on board too. So that says a lot. What I love about it is this mess detect feature, which adapts and adjusts its suction power and then the water output based on the mess. So, whether it's just a quick clean or something a little heavier, it handles it without me having to think about it. It also optimizes battery life, which is pretty cool. It has a dual tank system that I love. So it keeps the clean water clean and then the dirty water is separate. So you're always cleaning with fresh water. And that makes a huge difference, especially at this messy time of the year. And it's one of those tools that just makes keeping up with your home feel a lot more manageable. I definitely recommend the Tinco Go H2O Hammerhead with Mess Detect. You can find Tinco at Canadian Tire and Best Buy. Let's get back to the episode. Monica, welcome to The Juggle is Real. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. How are you?
I'm so good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. I love the title of your podcast. It's just very relatable.
It is true. And that's why I think, yes, we could all relate to it. And that's why I'm so excited for this conversation because the things that you work with your clients on, the things you've written this book about, is really things that we are living and breathing right now. And I know myself, I've said it before in past episodes, it feels like my husband and I, some days are just like two ships passing in the night. We speak, but it's nothing of substance. It's like who's picking up who's going where, what's happening for dinner, who's on bedtime duty, those sorts of things. So I feel like this is going to be helpful for me, for the listener, for so many of us. And before we dive in, because I do want to really go deep in this conversation with you, I would like to know though how you have ended up doing what you're doing, how, what led you to this path and this journey in supporting so many this way.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I was like perfectly prepped for this line of work. My parents divorced when I was 12, and I just remember
Mm,
when they announced it, I was like, it was earth-shattering. Like, what? Like you don't get along, you don't want to be together anymore. Like I just didn't understand it. And so I was thrown into really a lot of questions about what makes marriage strong and lasting. And so I started observing couples around me
mm,
and my friends' parents and other family members. And I remember thinking to myself, it doesn't seem like these people are having a lot of fun together. Like marriage
mm,
should be a slumber party with your best friend every night. And so what is there to not enjoy? And so I really kind of made that my mission. I studied it in college, met my Prince Charming right when I graduated. We started a family together. And then really were thrown into this situation that you described. The struggle is real, right? We were starting a business and we had, started having babies right away. So, I mean, I had 3 young children when I finally just fell apart. Like I had this debilitating anxiety. I couldn't get out of bed or take care of myself or my family because I was so anxious about getting it wrong. I just thought my coping mechanism all my life was be perfect. And I
mm.
couldn't juggle all of the things on my plate, right? My husband was starting a business. I was very involved in that. I had these 3 little children, deadlines all the time. My house was always a mess. I wasn't doing any of the things that I thought would make me a good wife and mother. And so I just kind of collapsed under the weight of it all. And it was my mom who helped me, who is a therapist and remarried. So this is interesting. My parents are both therapists and they divorced and remarried therapists. So I was kind of raised by 4 therapists. I was doomed from the beginning. I like knew I was going to go into this line of work. I did it a little bit differently. I am not a therapist. I am certified in 2 different types of therapy, relational life therapy and sex therapy, but I am a coach. So I work a little bit differently with couples, but I knew I needed to work with couples and help them just learn to love their marriage again. And so that's what I do.
That's incredible. And I mean, what a tender age to have your parents, divorce. And it sounds like things have worked out and come full circle. But I do appreciate how you fully and completely understand what many of us are going through and that you are stepping up to provide the support and to provide some answers because something I hear a lot, whether it's, with hockey moms or chatting with girlfriends or just even myself feeling it at times is like, okay, I love my partner. I love my spouse. I think our relationship, I mean, there's nothing quote unquote wrong, it's quote unquote good, I guess. But like maybe we feel frustrated. Maybe we feel disconnected or something just is a little off and we can't quite point our finger on it. And we're not really spending a lot of time to, uncover what's happening. So do you think that this is more common happening now or, why would you say this is the case for many of us and how we're feeling?
Yeah. I mean, I think we expect so much more from modern marriage than we ever did before. A couple of generations back, you had marriage of basically convenience. Like we got married in order to perpetuate the human race, to make life a little bit easier. But there was more. kind of expected roles. It was like you agreed to do this certain thing, and this is what you could contribute, and that was kind of it. But now we want so much more out of marriage, right? We want to be married to our best friend, our soulmate, someone who challenges us, our adventure buddy, a lover, somebody who brings out the best in us. I mean, we want so much, and there's no roles anymore. It's like so cool, but it requires more skills. We get to write our own love story, meaning there's no right way. Most families now have two income households. The roles are equally shared. We kind of write our own scripts, and we have to negotiate and renegotiate our entire lives how we're going to manage all that there is to juggle. Used to be like men worked, women stayed home. Like, there was just very common, like, you do this and I do this, and then we just live. We just live together in mutual toleration. Well, now it's like, these are all my responsibilities. These are your responsibilities. These are all the things we've got to pay a mortgage. We've got to raise these kids. We've got to, make car payments and get them to all their activities. And how are we going to split this up? How are we going to juggle this between us? And it's constantly in flux and changing. And in order to create a life this way, we need better skill sets. And that's what relationship is. That's what communication and connection and all of those things required to co-create a life together. It's a skill like any other skill. If we want to learn a new sport, if we want to get good at our job, if we want to learn how to play an instrument, we have to be willing to prioritize learning the skills that are required. And typically we start badly, right? Messy. We all start as beginners. And that's how we have to, that's kind of the humility required in marriage is we've got to get the skills to be able to communicate, to be able to co-create the life that we really desire.
It does make so much sense when you say it that way, and I think so many couples feel like they are like, working hard when it comes to, managing all the things and even maybe in their relationship, but they're still not feeling connected to their partner, and I think you bring a lot to the table here because you're talking about the skill set. Can you share maybe a little bit more on that? Or maybe why we're not feeling connected when we think maybe we are trying hard.
Yes. Okay, so there's so much here, but feeling disconnected when we are trying is just it's just a dynamic that we fall into, right? Like, so a lot of us have a lot of protective patterns and we just don't know the skills that we need. Like, we're not taught in our family growing up, even if we had great parents who had a good relationship, a lot of times they lacked the sense of the ability to communicate for connection that we need. And so it's a matter of learning those things. And so creating connection is all about, to me, teaching our partner how to treat us. And we do that through communicating, through making requests, through setting appropriate boundaries. And so whether you're talking about your life partner in your marriage or a coworker or your mother-in-law, there's a certain set of skills that we use to make requests that basically teach other people how to treat us. So I go back to a client that I had. There was this couple and they came into my office and she was like, literally had her bags packed, like 1 foot out the door. She was ready to leave the relationship. And the husband was literally stunned. Like, he was like, I have no idea. Like, I want this marriage to work. I love my wife. I have no idea what I'm doing wrong. And so we got into it, kind of like just talking about what it was that she really wanted. And she was very clear. She said, I always wished for a husband that would bring me coffee in bed every morning. And he was like, what? I've never heard that before. You've never said that to me. I'm happy to bring you coffee in bed. And what we had to work through was this idea that if you had to ask for it, it didn't mean as much. And that was just a belief that she brought into the marriage, because we all do that, right? I always say it's like moving in together. You both bring your baggage and then you stuff it in the closet.
Yeah.
And so now you're dealing with all of this baggage in the closet. And what's required is you've got to go through the closet and you've got to take out the things that aren't serving the marriage. And that belief that if you had to ask for it, it doesn't mean as much, was keeping them stuck. And it almost destroyed the best thing she had, right? And so like years later now, she's like, I can't believe I almost walked out on the best thing that ever happened to me because I wasn't willing to say, can you bring me coffee in bed? And so learning how to make these requests and teach our partner how to treat us, and recognizing that it means more when you've asked for it and your partner can give you that, not less. So yeah, it's like a combination of all those things.
That might be just the greatest example. And I think, to some degree, it's like, we're not mind readers. And I think what's interesting about that is that the person you're speaking about, had she left that relationship, perhaps gone into a new relationship, she would have still held those beliefs and would not have spoken up to say what she wants or what she's looking for. And so the pattern would have repeated itself. And so it's so great that you were able to help them uncover something seemingly so small, and yet look how huge it would have changed their lives. And I think that is often one of the little missing pieces, is that it's not like, and in some cases it is huge catastrophic things or things that are very devastating, but most of the time it is the little things that kind of add up, that get us really agitated, or over time we feel like, oh, I can't take it anymore. And so I
Mhm.
want to talk about resentment. Resentment comes up a lot. I actually, a couple of years ago, I had Dr. Tracy Dalgleish on. We had a whole episode on it, but I think it bears going over and over again, because I don't think people often understand. I know I don't really, where this resentment actually starts and what's really happening underneath. Can you put a little flashlight on this, maybe share some of those early signs of
Yeah.
resentment that women might be missing? Maybe they think it's normal, or help us uncover what this feeling of resentment is.
Yes. I think resentment is the best indicator that you're not getting something you want, that you feel you're being treated unfairly. It's like the indicator light on our dashboard in the car. If we pay attention to it, we'll see that it's an indication that something needs some attention, right? And like I always laugh because I am the worst at this. Like an indicator light will come on and then my car will break down or I'll run out of gas or something like that. And then I'm like, how did this happen?
Wait a
But I
second.
had the indicator, I had the warning light on for a long time. I just wasn't paying attention to it. So if we will pay attention to resentment, then we'll be able to give attention to what needs attention in our car or our relationship. And then we won't have that moment of the car broke down or doesn't start or something, right? So resentment, here's how we can pay attention to the resentments. It's typically because as humans, it's really easy to complain. So pay attention. So early signs is when you're complaining, when you call your mom or your girlfriend or your gym buddy and you're just complaining about something, right? My partner never helps around the house, my partner never initiates, my partner doesn't do this. If you're having the thought like this would be so much easier or I would be so much happier if blankety blankety blank. That is the complaint. That is the creator of the resentment. That is the indicator light that shows you what to check up on. So whatever you're complaining about, that's like tire pressure, gas, engine, like it's like the little thing that's going to tell you what it is that needs attention in the marriage. So now, if you'll pay attention to the complaint, underneath that complaint, whatever that complaint is, there's going to be some desire, request, or longing underneath there. So an easy one when you're juggling a lot is some sort of like mental load type thing. I just wish my husband was more helpful around the house. I wish he would help with the kids more, right? So now you've got the check engine light. You're like, okay, obviously the roles that we have need some attention. What is the request? Now, what most people will do is say, yeah, I need more help around the house. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm exhausted. There's too much that I have personally to take care of. I need some support. The problem is that when you say, I need more help around the house, that's not super helpful. Like, how do I know if I've come through for you? Right. So, the next step after recognizing what it is that we need or what needs some attention is to get stupidly specific. And this is hard for people because you've got to get curious. You've got to be like, okay, what is like sending me over the edge? What do I actually need help with? And how can I be stupidly specific so I can help my partner win? So a lot of times I use this example. I need help cleaning the kitchen. Like I cook and then, the next morning I'm up and I'm getting the kids, like I can't start with a messy kitchen. So I need some help cleaning the kitchen. So if you could be in charge of cleaning the kitchen 3 nights a week, and when I say cleaning the kitchen, what I mean by that is clearing the dishes off the table, getting them in the dishwasher, wiping off the counters, sweeping the floors, taking out the garbage, so that I have like a clean canvas to start with in the morning. That would be so helpful. And that's stupidly specific. Your partner can go, absolutely, I can do that for you, or I cannot, right? It's making a request is also knowing that your partner can either accept or reject the request. And that's vulnerable. So you have to be willing to do that. That's hard for a lot of people. And then step 3. So I teach it in steps. The first step is being willing to make the request. It's remembering love. Remember that the person you're talking to is the person that you love and you live with. And the reason why you're addressing this is because you want things to be better. The alternative is a bunch of resentment. The alternative is just wishing and hoping and hinting that he's just going to figure out what to do, right? So you make the decision, I'm going to make a request. And then step 2 is be stupidly specific. Help your partner win in any possible way you can. And step 3, and this is the part that most people forget, is to appreciate whatever progress you're getting. So if your partner just does 10% of what you ask them to do, you get real appreciative. Hey, I realize, or I recognize that you cleaned the kitchen on Monday and it was so helpful. You did such an amazing job. How can I help you or encourage you to do it 3 times next week instead of just 1, right? So appreciate what you're getting and keep fighting for what you want. Keep helping your partner win. That's how we get more of what we want. So complaint and criticism is not going to get you more of what you want. Making a request and appreciating progress, this will get you more of what you want.
That's so good because it is true. And something that I do hear a lot is like, oh, but then he just doesn't do it properly. And so then I just do it anyway. And then it leads to more resentment. Right. And so I do appreciate those 3 steps, especially step number 3, to appreciate the progress, but also to continue to communicate what it is that you actually need. And that I think is so big and so huge. Something that you mentioned earlier that kind of stuck with me was like when I, was younger and I was looking around and I was thinking, people aren't having a lot of fun. Like it just does not look like the couples I'm seeing are enjoying themselves. It should be this big slumber party every night with your best friend and, like all sorts of fun stuff. And I mean, that's great and maybe a little naive at a young age, but I don't think we're super far off. I think we can get there. But oftentimes we're feeling like roommates. And you talk about roommate syndrome. I think that's so relatable. Can you talk about what roommate syndrome looks like in this sort of busy modern family life that we're living and how much of it is just lack of effort versus the reality of what we're living right now?
Yeah. So, in order to create the kind of friendship and fun, and you have to be willing to invest in it. And so that's what a lot of times couples will come and be like, we feel like roommates. We're ships passing in the night. We only talk about logistics. Like we're so busy and bogged down with the daily to-dos that we don't We're not having fun together. And I'll say, show me your calendar, show me your finances, and I'll tell you what you value. So things that get on our calendar, we're not going to miss dentist appointments. We're not going to miss podcast interviews. We're not going to miss meetings with clients, right? We prioritize those things and they get on the calendar. But what about our spouse? What about making time to connect specifically and have fun with our partner? So I talk about this 3% rule. If you want to be connected, if you want to have fun together, it takes 3% of your time. That is such a small amount of time. And the cool thing about time is the great equalizer. Nobody gets more or less time than anyone else on the planet. You can't buy more time, you can't earn it. Literally, we all get the same amount of time. It's just how we decide to use it. And so 3% of our time looks like this. You spend 20 minutes out of the 1,440 minutes that we all get in a day. Imagine only 20 minutes if you will make a commitment to connect with your partner for 20 minutes, whether it's a walk after dinner, whether it's a few minutes after you put the kids to bed, whether it's running an errand together, or even doing the dishes together. If you will have conversations, connecting conversations that sound like, what are you learning about? What book are you reading? Who did you talk to today that was so fascinating that you learned something from? What are you excited about that's coming up? What makes you nervous? What can I do to make your life easier? Those types of questions. 20 minutes a day. And then if you will mark off on your calendar 3 hours a week, everybody gets 168 hours in a week. 3 of those hours should be specifically spent. I call it date night, but you can do it any time of day. It doesn't have to be expensive, elaborate, or far from home, but it needs to be intentional. We're going to go do something fun together. We're going to go do something we both enjoy. We're going to go do something new. We're going to go try a restaurant we've never tried before. Like literally schedule in time with your partner. Not only does this give you time to have fun together, but it also shows your partner that you are a priority to me. My husband and I do date night every week. And we have this rule that it can slide around on the calendar because we have a lot of kids with a lot of activities and things come up, but it never gets erased. We prioritize each other 3 hours a week. And then 1 week out of the 52 weeks of the year, go somewhere fun. My husband and I leave in a couple of days to go to Hawaii. We make it like a concerted effort to go away together and we dream together. We plan our future. We talk about what's it going to look like when our kids, like we're halfway empty nesters. 2 of our kids are out of the house as adults and we've got 2 teenagers that are very busy. What's our life going to look like when they are grown? Like, what kind of grandparents are we going to be? We talk about these, we dream about these things. It keeps us connected and enjoying our life together. And so that's the 3% rule. It's super simple. You just have to put some intention behind it.
Yeah, I agree. And it again, it sounds so easy, Monica. It sounds so easy. I do, before we move on, I just want to ask one quick question because I can hear the listeners' rebuttal of like,
Yeah.
what do I do with my kids? What, okay,
Uh-huh.
fine, great, that's great. But I can't afford a babysitter, or I don't have parents who live in town, or can you
Okay.
debunk that
I
myth?
love this question. I love this question so much because, yes, you do have to get creative. I remember early in our marriage when we were starting our business and like money was tight. We created a group in our neighborhood. Everybody had kind of the same age-ish kids. And it was crazy, but it worked awesome. So one weekend out of the month, one weekend night, we would have all the kids at our house. So we'd put on a movie, we'd put them out in the backyard, we'd like put pillows down on the ground and like kind of put them all to bed that night, And the 3 other couples in the group would go out and have their date night. And then we got 3 nights of the month where we got to go out and somebody watched our kids. We've done, family members, we've done cheap babysitting, we've done trades. You've got to get creative, but that's the point. It's like, listen, are we going to make it enough of a priority to get creative to figure out how we can make this work? And here's one of the most important things that you can gift and teach to your children is that there are other adults that can offer support, right? We don't
Mm-hmm.
want to feel like the only place our kids can ever come for anything is their parents. So right now, I mean, our kids are old enough, we leave them on their own a lot, but we have a couple that lives across the street. They're kind of like de facto grandparents. And so when we're out of town, they'll like bring dinner to our kids or they'll invite our kids over and things like that. So there's like a village where we live. We've created a community in a village. I always joke my kids that they're not going to be able to get into too much trouble because someone will recognize them. We've been very intentional about creating a community and a village around our children. When kids their age, we get to know their parents, we switch. There's a time when my husband and I are going out of town and my 14-year-old basically be on his own. He's not old enough to stay by himself, but he has a friend whose parents, we take their kid sometimes, they'll take our kid sometimes. And so being intentional about creating a community of other adults that our kids can look to when they have questions, when they have problems, when they need things is such a gift that we've given them, right? Because sometimes, and all of my kids have gotten to a point where they're like, my parents are dumb. And so I'm so grateful that there's other adults that they can go to for support. And typically those adults are very supportive of us. So they can be like, oh, right, maybe you feel like that rule is dumb, but your parents have that rule for you because they love you. There's always going to be times when they need jobs that, we've got friends that have given all of our kids jobs at different points in their lives, right? So it's just really good to create a community like that. Be intentional about it.
I appreciate you saying that. I also appreciate that, as you were giving us all of these examples and ideas, which are really helpful, I was also thinking, when it comes to, one of my sons needing a ride to hockey practice, but we are also out of town with our other son, and as my youngest needs that, like, we can really make things work when we feel it's a priority. And so why shouldn't we make our relationship a priority as well? And so I think that's a really, really key thing that you've supported us in expressing. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
I want to touch upon the mental load, and I want to talk about some of these relationship dynamics that you might be seeing often. Um, because statistically, and I'm grateful for more research and more findings on the mental load and how disproportionate it is typically in many relationships, that women carry so much more. It might not be talked about directly, but what happens when one partner, typically, the mom, is feeling like they're carrying more, but doesn't know how to articulate it? Because earlier you were saying, it's important to, say what you need, make that specific request, follow up on it, and appreciate what's happening. But in a lot of cases, there's just so much that it's like, you've got to do their dentist appointments, their, who's their teacher, and all of these little tiny things. And I think that is hard in some ways to articulate. So how do we, when we're feeling like we are carrying the brunt of it and we're struggling, where do we start with that? Because it's hard to just dump your head out and be like, help me with this,
Yeah. Well, I think that's exactly what needs to happen is there's all kinds of research and studies and we are getting a lot more aware of mental load, but when it comes down to it, I mean really there's no way around just dumping your brain out on paper. Like I always say, this is a really good exercise for you guys. Sit down and like literally dump out, here are all the things that I think about on it like a daily basis. It's kind of like looking at your bank account. Like this is funny because I just recently had to switch banks because the bank I was using was like giving me fees all the time. And I was like, I can't like handle this. Right. And so it's been a process, but I've had to go through and like, what are all the different things that put money into my account and where are all the places that go out of my account? You like take inventory and you have to switch all those things over. And then you have to like make a plan, right? Like I can't go below this amount or else I'm going to get dinged. And so I have to like pay off this credit card and then move this over. And then it's like you got to make a plan for how are we going to account for all the things. It's the same with mental load. Sit down with your spouse and just dump out like, doctor's appointments and school, back to school night and school supplies and all of the different activities that our kids are signed up for. And you might have to do this at different stages and phases of your life. But write down all of the things. I actually have a dear friend of mine who's creating an app for this, where it basically you dump into the app all the different roles and responsibilities and things that are involved in running your household and taking care of your kids and making the money and all the things. And you dump it all in, and then you separate it out, right? This is a conversation. This is the things I'm in charge of. These are the things you're in charge of. And then we call them offices in my family just because we ran a business together for so long. And so there were certain things that happened in my office and I was in charge of those things. So if I needed to delegate something or I needed to hire someone to do something, or if I just needed help with it, it's my responsibility for the result of what happens in my office. But I can, ask my husband for help with it or, hire somebody or whatever. But at the end of the day, what happens in my office is mine and the same for his. Now, that doesn't mean it always has to stay the same. Like bills early in our marriage, I paid all the bills. I did all of the, making sure that our credit was good and blah, blah, blah. Then I started having a whole bunch of kids and I was like, this is making me crazy. Anything with deadlines like bills and payroll. And I'd be like nursing a kid and somebody's like hanging off the walls and I got to get other kids to school. And I couldn't do the bills anymore. And so I was like, I have to hand this off. So we got an accountant for the company bills and then my husband took over the personal bills. And so this is just a constant conversation. What needs to be done and how do we co-create this so that nothing falls through the cracks? The alternative is just not sweating the small stuff is what I say. Like I'll just do it. It's easier for me to do it. It's easier for me to do it than to show somebody else how to do it or explain to somebody or delegate it or whatever. But really, you're a team. There's two of you. Two are always better than one. So just take the time to dump it all out, divvy it out, and then see how that works. You may have to renegotiate, but at least start there.
Your first date night now might have to be this divvying up and the dump, the mental load dump. I feel like that might be a good. There's an admin night trend going around. I feel like maybe we're going to a coffee shop and we're writing out all of the things and
Take a
creating
whiteboard with you.
offices. Strategy
Seriously,
session. Totally.
Exactly, right? That's the beauty of co-creating your life. It's like these are things that I have choice around. It's like I'm choosing to take this on. I'm talking about how this feels like too much. And then together you're like putting your heads together and you're instead of just like rolling through the motions, which is what so many of us do. We're just like, just go with it, whatever, like resent, it's like a really proactive approach to like, what are we going to create together? What do we want this to look like? How are we going to tackle this together as a team? Those are the types of questions that you ask.
I appreciate that so much. And I was just thinking too, just like in general, the example you gave of paying the bills is such a good one. And where we live, I don't know what kind of winters you have had recently in Boise, Idaho, but I'm in Northern Ontario and we just had so much snow this winter. We moved in the fall. Our driveway is a little bit bigger. It's a little bit different shape. And, my husband was his office included snow removal. And so, he was like, I think I need something to help me with this. And I was like, but we have so many other things we want to buy for this new house. And then push came to shove. I'm like, okay, well, if that's going to support you, because hockey season's
That's
big in our
office.
house.
Yeah.
He coaches 3 hockey teams. He works full time. He does all these things. And then he bought this quad with a plow. And I will say it made such a difference in his life that it was such a huge relief. And so then when I saw that happening, I was like, that's amazing. And on the flip side of it, we used to have someone who would come to help clean the house because most of the cleaning tasks, not all, but most of the cleaning tasks is part of my office. And I am also self-employed. I do a lot of work from home. And I we had someone coming and that ended just before Christmas. So for the last few months, I've not had any support with that. And I have felt that so much. It has been very heavy. It has felt heavy. And just this week now, we will have someone coming back again, and it was a matter of finding the right person and replacing and all sorts of things that was part of the things that I take care of. But I will
Process.
say
Yeah.
the contrast, right, in not having that support was very visible, and it did strain things because then I was starting to feel resentful, like, why is this dirty? Why do I have to clean this again? What's going on? Why can't and on top of that, I also learned to ask for more support from my children who are now getting older
Old
and now
enough to
have the
help.
capacity and the ability
Yeah.
to do those things. So I think what you are saying makes so much sense. Could you maybe just share a little bit more, because you were talking about how you are a team, you and your spouse, you are a team,
Mhm.
um, and what it actually looks like on a day-to-day basis, like what real teamwork and real communication as a team looks like, if you have any other examples or any other skill sets that might be supportive for this.
Yeah, so many. But I will say, in what you just said, pay attention. You really great is you paid attention to that indicator light that is resentment. You're like, this is feeling really heavy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
being in charge of the whole house and having to do all my other responsibilities. That's like the check engine light went on and you went, okay, we need to find somebody to help with this. And so that's really, really good to pay attention to. What are you complaining about? What are you like, I don't want to clean the house all that. Like, this is too much for me. That's your little check engine light went on. And then you can either, take the car in yourself, or you can talk to your husband and be like, listen, my check engine light is on. Is this something you can YouTube, or do I need to take it to the mechanic? Right.
Right.
So pay attention to those check engine lights in the form of resentment. But other skills, I would say collaboration is a really, really, really important skill. So when I was writing my book, I would go around and I would ask old couples, like older couples that seemed really happy, and be like, what's your best advice? And so often I would hear, learn how to compromise. That
Oh.
is everybody's best advice for marriage. Now, years ago or decades ago or generations ago, I think that was probably good advice. Learn how to compromise. However, in our modern marriage, where we need better skills to co create this life together, compromise is a lazy way to do things. It's like, I give up stuff, you give up stuff, we meet in the middle, and neither of us are really getting what we want. But more importantly, we're not really considering the things that we value the most. So, collaboration is the skill set that I teach. So, when you're talking about these different offices and who to give what to and how to work things out, we'll use the example of the snowplow. Like, you were like, "Ooh, it feels like a really big expense. Like, I'm not sure your position is here."
Right.
And your partner is like, bro, I have got to do something. I'm doing all of these things and I can't not purchase this snowplow. So you have two different positions that are opposing. So you could compromise and buy half a snowplow, or you can get real clear on what you value. You're worried about the expense of it and, like, whatever. And your partner is like, I'm worried about the load and just not being able to produce all the things, like have time for the kids and do the practices, whatever, right?
Mhm.
And so it's getting real clear, where is my position on this? Why do I feel so strongly about this thing? What do I value about this thing? And then get real curious about your partner, and then get curious about what's my reservation about my partner's position. So you're like, oh, I don't know if we have the money for this. We have all these other expenses, right? So that's your reservation about your partner's position. And then now that you have all of that out on the table, you get real resourced. Okay, what are our options? Can we maybe get a used quad and the good snowplow behind it? Maybe that will be enough. Let's try that, right? So you get resourced about what are the options where you take the best of your what you value and the best of what your partner values. And instead of just meeting in the middle, now you've elevated the level of the solution that you can come up with together. So that's collaboration. You can do that on any decision, like what to eat for dinner or where to go for dinner, to how to educate the kids, where to live, what careers you want to chase, right? So it's like literally collaboration is the higher skill than compromise.
I love that. And I can see very clearly in places like exactly how you've very clearly outlined it. In my marriage, I can see places where we have collaborated that has resulted in some pretty amazing things. And then I can probably recognize some places where we didn't. And that, and it ended up making things a little bit more muddied and a little bit more complicated. And so this word of collaboration over compromise, I think, is so key. So key.
The beautiful thing about collaboration is you get really clear about each other's values and what you think is important. So you can make decisions on your own and take into consideration your partner. So, like for us in our household, this is around technology. My husband and I have very different positions on technology. My husband's like, no technology ever. Don't ever give these kids Instagram, right? And I'm like, okay, but Instagram is like part of learning like business, and we have athletes who are trying to get recruited, and like it's an important thing to understand how to navigate and create a healthy relationship with. So we were like so we could compromise, and like I'm like, my husband's like, never give them Instagram. And I'm like, give them Instagram while they're still in my household, and I can still like monitor and you see how they're using it and teach them how to use it well. And, so we could compromise and just be like, all right, well, when they're 17, they get Instagram. That's not like, that's so lazy to me. I understand my husband's reservations and the fears he has around Instagram. And also he understands like my views around it. So it's like, we've collaborated in that there's certain times when our kids get access to certain types of technology, and they always start on my phone. So like my daughter's Instagram account, she's 17, but she has to come to my phone to access Instagram. And so by the time she's out of the house, she can decide how she wants to use Instagram. But I've also been there to supervise and guide and, all of that. Right. But I'm taking into consideration the things my husband values about it. And he recognizes what I value about it. And so we've come up with a solution together. And so far, so good. It's like worked pretty good for our adult kids who they're in charge of their own technology now. So that's the value of collaboration over compromise. Compromise just like, all right, let's we each just give up stuff until we like reach some sort of middle ground, which is not that's a pretty lazy way to operate versus I've gotten into my husband's head. Like I know how he feels about this and why he feels this way and what his biggest reservations are. And he's in my head too. And so when it's just one of us like trying to make the decision on what are we going to do here, it's like I'm very aware of all of the factors.
And I think it's great that we can come to the table with different opinions, and we have different beliefs, and but the feeling of mutual respect and the ability to consider other opinions, which I think is a life skill. So not just in an intimate relationship, but across the board, I think is just so important overall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can't have a sex therapist on my podcast and not go into the topic of intimacy, because I think it comes up a lot, and many of us are feeling like it's still taboo to discuss. And I do want to touch upon it because it can be such an important part of a relationship, but also, one of those things that can cause a lot of disruption or resentment or unwanted feelings. So can you maybe share with us, because we've been talking a lot about feeling disconnected or feeling like something's not quite right or feeling like it's okay, but I would like to be more connected. how does emotional disconnection show up in physical intimacy? And then also the opposite. You know what I mean? Like, how does the connection really support intimacy in a relationship?
Yeah, such a beautiful question because it is. To me, it's two separate systems. You've got emotional intimacy and you've got sexual intimacy. They're interconnected, but also separate. It's dynamics that you create in the relationship, and they often mirror like a power struggle or some sort of a defense driven dynamic. And so our sexuality is so vulnerable, and it's also so laced with our history. What did we learn about our sexuality growing up? Most of the time it's not much, or it's that it's bad or dangerous, or not to be taken lightly or whatever. And so getting real vulnerable and curious about each other's sexuality and beliefs around that is so I at any stage of your relationship, you can go back and do this, but I work with newlyweds a lot, and setting them up for success sexually is like one of my main goals. And so I just give them this advice. Set up a weekly time where you're going to talk about your intimacy, with your sex life, right? But don't do it in the bedroom, and don't do it like staring into each other's eyes, because it is so vulnerable. So I always say, set up like a sex talk Tuesday is what I recommend, and go for a walk or a drive. Living in Ontario, I would say probably I'm going to opt for
A
driving, right? But you're
snowshoe.
sitting, yes, you're sitting and you're looking in the same direction and you're
Yes.
creating something together. And so you're going to check in once a week, sex talk Tuesday. You're going to go for a drive and you're just going to be like, how's this going? How do we both feel about our sexual relationship? Is it working for us? Is there something we want to add? Is there something we want to take away? Is there something we're feeling sheepish about? How do we approach this as a team to co-create the sexual relationship that we want? So weekly check-ins, really, really important. And then the other thing, I like you to start as newlyweds, but if you've been married for decades, this also is so helpful, is to separate, like have nights. So whatever your frequency is, whatever you're comfortable with, let's say it's twice a week. One of those nights is the wife's night, and one of those nights is the husband's night. And so on Tuesday nights, you're in charge of the entire sexual encounter. You get to initiate, you get to set the stage, you get to be in the boss and in charge of what happens on your night. And I always say, take into consideration all of your senses. What do you want the room to smell like? How do you want the lighting? What do you want the foreplay to be like? You direct the whole encounter on your night, and then your partner gets their night. And then those are the things that you talk about on your sex talk Tuesday. What did you think of my night? What worked for you? What felt really awesome to you? What did you not appreciate about that part? And you both come to each other's nights really open and curious, creating a very safe environment for your partner to be vulnerable about what it is they want to try and do and be in charge of, right? And so if you'll do that, you'll get to know each other very well. And the goal is to open up the menu of what sex is, because a lot of couples get real stuck in one dynamic of penis and vagina, somebody orgasms, it's over, right? And so the goal is to open up the menu and get real knowledgeable about what feels good to your partner. Like your partner gets to explore on their night. You're just there to like facilitate, because there is some selfishness in sex. There is this is what feels good to me. This is what feels pleasure to me. And the goal is then to create not a thing that you do, but a place where you both go that you can be cared for. That's the goal of Sex Talk Tuesday and giving each other nights. It's to create a place you can go to be cared for by your partner.
Wow. I've never heard it put that way. And I think that's just so wonderful. I appreciate that so much. And as I always think of any sort of rebuttals, because,
Yeah, do,
we
do,
we
do.
are having this conversation I can hear a listener saying, perfect, sounds great, but like, I'm so tired, or the kids are up, or by the time everything gets done, or we're just so busy, and so
Yeah, yeah.
you've done some
Mhm.
wonderful debunking of some of these myths. I know in this stage of life too, with hormones changing as women are aging, some of these feelings might be changing as well, that are more physical and not necessarily due to a lack of loving our partner. Anything that you can say to support some of these sort of, I guess, quote unquote excuses that might put a strain on someone's intimate relationship at this stage of life?
Yeah. It's just like raising like keeping your monogamy hot or your sexual relationship going is just like raising kids. It's like every time you think you have it figured out, you'll reach a new stage, new level, new devil, right? And so it's important to keep this conversation always going. You're always renegotiating, you're always navigating together. You've got to keep that line of communication open. If you create a safe place to talk about sex, money, parenting, developing, religion, the things that are important to you, if you create a space of curiosity and vulnerability, you can co create anything you want. It's about what do you prioritize. So, yeah, like people will say, we want to have a really awesome, healthy sex life. But are you going to put it on the calendar, like where you get a night and your spouse gets a night? Like, is it that important to you? If not, you should think about what you actually value or think is important. So if you're willing to put the intention behind it, to put time, energy, financial time, energy, resources behind it, it'll grow. It'll stay healthy, right? The difference between the couple in the restaurant that's not talking to each other, you know who that couple is, right? You go out to eat and they're like literally just all you hear is the forks clinking on the plate.
They're on their
It's
phones.
not because it's not because they've run out of things to talk about. It's because there are topics that are not safe to discuss. And so they've learned that there are certain things that they just cannot talk about. And so if you make it your goal to like be curious and vulnerable, you'll never, never, never run out of things to talk about. You'll talk about your ideas about kids and money and religion and sex, and all of those topics will be on the table, and you're going to change all throughout your whole life. Your kids are going to grow. You're like it's different challenges when your kids are little versus when they're teenagers or when they are adults, right? And your sex life will grow. Like it's a different challenge when you have no kids to work around versus you've just had some kids, your body is changing versus menopause. Like there's always new stages and new phases to work out and renegotiate. So keep that line of communication very, very open and you'll be fine.
I love that. Grass is greener where you water it. And this collaboration
Yeah.
coming up again as this beautiful theme that you've woven through this conversation. I wish that I could spend all day chatting with you, Monica, because I think it's just
Likewise.
been so helpful. I would love for you to share about your book that you've written. It's called Bad Marriage Advice. I think the concept is phenomenal. And I think you've sort of given us some of, the bad marriage advice myths, and you've sort of helped to support us. But can you share more about why you wrote this book, what it's all about, and how we can get ourselves a copy?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. Well, I've always wanted to write a book. So that's always been in the back of my mind, but I always thought I need more experience. I need more content. I need more, like I just need more. But last year, my oldest son decided he was getting married and I panicked a little. He called, he's like, Mom, I've met the girl I want to marry. I'm like, great, that's amazing. He's like, I'm going to propose next month. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, have I taught this kid everything he needs to know about marriage? I obviously am very opinionated on the topic. And so I sat down to write him a note of like all the things I was like, oh, did I teach him this? Did I teach him this? And it really like quickly turned into this format of here's all the things you're going to hear about marriage. People are going to give you well-intentioned, well-meaning advice. And here's what's going to be bad about it. Like that I've learned in my 24 years of marriage and working with couples, here are the things that are going to keep you stuck. And so I ended up, it turned into this book called Bad Marriage Advice, Debunking Myths That Will Make You Miserable and What to Do Instead. And it really is about like, this might have been good advice at some point in time, but in our modern marriage, if we want to create our happily ever after love story, here's what works better. And that's the book.
Beautiful. And we can get it on Amazon. I'm going to share links to your website as well in the show notes. But I appreciate you writing this because I think even, for someone who has been married for many years, like we've learned through this conversation, like there is some advice that we can kind of put by the wayside, and there's some better support that we can be leaning into, and things that we can be prioritizing. So I thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Just as we close out, if there's one thing you wish women understood about their relationship right now, one takeaway that we can leave today, what would that be?
Oh, never beat yourself up. Like, just when we know better, we do better, right? And life is just all about learning and reaching the next stage. So it's not perfect. It's messy. You got to start everybody starts as a beginner, right? So if you want to get better at anything, relationships included, you got to be willing to be a beginner.
I love that. Never beat yourself up. It's not a loss, it's a learning. I really appreciate that. Yes. Thank you so much, Monica.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, that was such a thoughtful conversation. And I think one of the biggest takeaways from this is that feeling disconnected in your relationship doesn't mean something is broken. It often means that something is unspoken, unbalanced, or just not fully understood yet. And that really hits home. We talked about how resentment isn't usually about one big thing. It's the small, repeated experiences of feeling unseen, or feeling like you're carrying more, or feeling like you're not quite on the same team, and how easy it is for couples to slip into a pattern where they're, sort of functioning okay, pretty well, but not necessarily feeling connected. So what stood out for me most is this idea that it's not about doing more in your relationship. It's about understanding what's actually happening inside it. Because once you can see it more clearly, you can start to shift it in a way that feels realistic, but not forced, not like cliche. And I also really appreciated the reminder that your relationship doesn't need to look perfect or do certain things or look a certain way to be strong, but it does need the moments of connection and awareness and that intention behind it. I'm so grateful to Monica Tanner for joining me for this episode. And if it resonated with you, I would really appreciate it if you could share it with someone who might need to hear this too. And as always, you can reach out, message me, let me know what stood out. My DMs are open in Instagram at Andryanna G. There's also an email address in the notes for this podcast episode. And all of the links for Monica, including her new book, will be linked in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm so grateful for the time we spent together, and I can't wait to see you back. So make sure you're subscribed, follow along, write a review, all the things, and I will see you in the next episode. Until then, take good care.